guys, hope you're all doing fine. Hopefully everything's okay with you and your families. Hopefully you're not going crazy as well. So this week we've been working with surface area and volume of a cone. Tomorrow I'm going to give you guys a quiz on just surface area and volume of a cone. So what I wanted to do today was just do a quick review. Again, whenever we're dealing with a cone, you have an upside down ice cream cone, right? And since it's a cone, you know that the base is always going to be a circle, right? And since it's a circle, you know that you're also dealing with a radius. A radius there. And the reason that I'm putting just that is because when it comes to surface area and volume, you need different measurements. But the first thing, always remember, whenever you're dealing with surface area is always what's on the outside of a figure, and volume is always how much is on the inside of a figure. Same two questions that you guys have seen. So first, if we want to deal with surface area, just going to be 6 questions on tomorrow's quiz. 2 on surface area, 2 on volume, and then 1 asking what surface area and what volume is. Let's say if we wanted to find the surface area, and again, all the formulas that you need are all on that geometry formula sheet that I have on Pearson Realize. So for surface area, we know that the formula is going to be pi r squared plus pi rl. And again, the pi r squared represents how much area is on the circle, and the pi rl represents how much area is actually going around the cone. And we add them up because we want to find the total surface area. Now we know what r is. R is the radius. Let's say that the radius is 3 inches. And what L represents is how long the actual cone is. So in this case, let's say that the cone is 5 inches. Right? So all we need is just that. And we'll substitute them in. We know that 3 is the radius, and we know that 5 is the length, how long the cone actually is. So now in just substituting it, we have pi. We know that the radius is 3 squared plus pi. We know that the radius again is 3. And we know that the length of the cone is 5. So all we did to start off, we just substituted everything that we knew. We knew that pi stays the same. We know that the radius was 3. Square stays the same. Plus from there, pi stays the same. We know that the radius again was 3. And we know that the length of the cone was 5. And once we get this, we can start simplifying. And the first thing we can deal with is 3 squared. And just remember, 3 squared doesn't mean 3 times 2. 3 squared means you have 3 times 3. So 3 times 3 is going to be 9. We have the pi there. For the second part, we have the plus. Before we deal with the pi, let's just multiply this. And you know it's multiplication because whenever you have numbers next to each other, it's always multiplication when there's no plus or minus sign or division sign in between. So 3 times 5 is 15. And we have pi to bring down. And just again to show you where all this came from, we know that 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9. We have the pi there. We have the plus sign. We know that 3 times 5 was 15. And we brought down the pi. So that part right there was all done. Okay? And now even before this, if you wanted to, again, you can do it however you wanted to. If you wanted to add up these pi's, you could. Because basically this is saying 9 pi. That's saying 15 pi. So 9 pi's plus another 15 pi's would give you 24 pi. If you wanted to do that. If you really wanted to, you could write 24 pi. But I don't want to confuse you guys. Let me just actually do it the way that we've been seeing it the entire time. So we know that we have 9. And we know that pi is 3.14, right? So we would do 9 times 3.14 plus 15 times 3.14. And again, all I did was wherever there's pi, just substitute the estimate for 3.14. So we did 9 times 3.14 plus 15 times 3.14. And once we get to that point, we have 9 times 3.14 gives us 28.26, right? So we have that. Now we would do 15 times 3.14, which would give us 47.1. And again, all I did, I just multiplied the term times pi. So when we did 9 times 3.14, it gave us 28.26. When we did 15 times 3.14, it gave us 47.1. Since there's a plus sign, we brought it down. And now it's just a simple step of just adding them up. And when you add them up, 28.26 plus 47.1, it gives us 75.36. And then let's not forget the units. Since it's inches, it's going to be inches. And since we're talking about surface area is always going to be squared. Area is always squared. And again, if we're talking about the surface area, we know that the surface, how much material would actually be on the outside of that cone, would be 75.36 inches squared. So, excuse me. Oh, dropped my cap. So again, 2 questions of this on the quiz for surface area, where it's just going through the formula. Second part of the quiz, for the most part, it's going to ask you to just find volume of a cone. And again, since we're talking about volume, we know that the volume of the cone is going to be what's on the inside of the cone. In order to find that, again, there's the formula for volume of a cone. Right? And let me get rid of this because, again, the terms now are going to change, and I'll show you what I mean in a sec. So you have that, get rid of that. We know that the formula for volume of a cone is going to be 1/3 pi r squared times h. And we know that too to be true because, again, since it's a cone, it's 1/3 of a cylinder, which means it's 3 times smaller than a cylinder. That's a cylinder, to find the volume of a cylinder. And since it's 3 times smaller, that's why we take 1/3. That's just where the formula comes from. So now, if we're trying to find the volume of this cone, let's say now that we have the radius, which we need. Let's say that the radius here is going to end up being 4 centimeters, right? And now we need to know what the height of that cone is going to be as well. So they need to give us the height where we didn't need it before. And since it's a height, since it's straight up, we need to have a right angle right there. Let's say that the height of this cone is going to be 6 centimeters, right? So we know that the radius there is 4. We know the radius is 4, and we know that the height of the cone is 6. Just like we did before, let's just substitute everything that we know. It's going to be 1/3. It's going to be pi. We know that the radius here is 4, right? We know that the squared is there, and we know that the height is going to be 6. So right now, all we did, we just substituted. We have 1/3, we have the pi, we know that the radius was 4, we have the squared, and we know that the height of the cone is 6, which we just substituted. And before we do anything else, before you start multiplying, let's take care of that square. So bring down the 1/3, bring down the pi. We now know that 4 squared, 4 times 4 gives us 16, right? Bring down the 6. So now what we have here is, we brought down the 1/3, brought down the pi. We know that 4 times 4 was 16, and then the 6 was brought down as well. And once you have this, again, it just becomes so much easier. Before you deal with that 1/3, just multiply the 16 times the 6, which we've done over and over again. So bring down the 1/3, bring down the pi. We know that 16 times 6 is going to give us 96, right? And again, I got the 96 from doing 16 times 6, which gave us 96. And once you get to this step, and I just like to show it a different color just for you guys to see. It's always easier to deal with 1/3 of 96. Because if we're talking about 1/3 of 96, it's the same thing as saying that we're taking a third of it, which means you're dividing it by 3. It's like saying if you're taking half of 20, half of 20 is 10. Same idea. Whether you take half of 20 or do 20 divided by 2, same thing. So if we're talking about a third of 96, let's just literally do 96 divided by 3, which is going to give us 32. And where I got that 32 from, again, since we're talking about a third of 96, we did 96 divided by 3, which gave us 32. So let's write that down. A third of 96 is 32. Right? Don't forget the pi that's there. And now once we get it to this point, what we did before, instead of writing pi, we can write 3.14. Right? And now, last step is just multiplying it out. We would do 32 times, we would do 32 times 3.14, which would give us 100.48, which would be 100.48, right, centimeters. And since we're talking about volume, can't forget the cubed. It's got to be cubed. And again, it's just to show you, 100.48 centimeters cubed is how much space would actually fit inside of that cone. If you wanted to fill up that cone with anything, it would be 100.48 centimeters cubed inside of that cone. Again, on your quiz tomorrow, guys, it's just going to be surface area, it's going to be volume. Surface area is always what's on the outside of a figure. Volume is always what's on the inside of a figure. Again, don't forget to reference the formula sheets that I provide on Pearson Realize. Feel free to use the videos that I post on YouTube, anything online to help you guys out. Hope you're doing well with this, and let me know if you need anything. All the best, guys. Take care.